Yeah,
but
that's true. That's true.
I'm motivated. I was feeling a little burnt out in December, and then I saw Nancy Pelosi, take the speaker's gavel, and I'm back. So back.
Yeah.
So that was good. I think we all needed that, didn't we?
Yeah, no, I think you're right, and we're proud to see her there too. And congratulations on those roses, man, and to the Daily Coast community for raising the money for those roses.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks so much.
All right,
Looking
thank
forward. It's gonna be a good year.
thank you, man, and take care. Love to the kids too. All right,
Will do. Have a great weekend.
all right, take care now. Marcos Malitzas of Thursday Coast, folks. The Women's March is just over a week away. 9 days.
Yes, absolutely.
Nine days away. Is her mic up? 866-99 Serious. Here representing the Women's March. No. Over here. The Women's March NYC. And folks, you can join us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube / Make It Plain. We are streaming now. Our sister Queen is in studio. She is the head of the Women's March NYC.
Yes, I am.
Agunda Okeyo, am I right?
Okeyo.
Okeyo, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Agunda Okeyo from Kenya.
Yes.
So you from where Barack Obama's from?
So they claim, right?
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well, we says where his family's from.
Right.
How are you, sister?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Sirius XM.
Yeah, and it was great to be here.
Thank you for coming in bright and early in the morning. So we know that there are going to be sister marches all over the country, and one of them will be right here in New York.
Correct.
Tell us all about it.
So what we're organizing actually is what we call a women's unity rally. Because at least from my perspective, we've been marching. So we wanted to have a moment in 2019 in New York City to celebrate and recognize that we have a democratic state legislature, that we can put together this massive coalition of 50 organizations plus, who from grassroots to labor. And we're putting forth a policy platform that we rolled out a bit of it this week. And we're going to be making that a cornerstone of our programming for the rally. And it's going to be an opportunity for people to not only celebrate the fact that we did destroy the IDC in New York and make sure that we do have a fully democratic state legislature, but also for us to recognize that it's 100 years since women got the right to vote, and that MLK's anniversary of 51 years since we lost a brother is coming up. And his the anniversary, or the day when we celebrate his life, is the 21st, which is just 2 days after the 19th when we'll have our rally.
Yeah, so I was in a meeting last night, and I was saying how this women's movement is the largest and most diverse and most intersectional movement since Dr. King's death. The movement he was building, he was really killed for.
Yeah.
He was killed for building
Right.
such an intersectional movement.
Right, exactly. I mean, one of the things that I really wanted to integrate into how we spoke right now in 2019 is that Dr. King was talking about imperialism.
Right.
He was talking about war. He was talking about poverty. And those issues couldn't be more prescient today. And we know that, Reverend Benjamin Barber is doing his work around the People's Campaign, the Poor People's Campaign
right.
in North Carolina. But we wanted to make sure, I grew up here. I'm an immigrant who grew up in New York City. And, I've seen the gentrification. I've seen the ways that we haven't necessarily lived up to our idea of being a blue state. So the idea that now a lot of people are electrified, the Women's March is here. It's not only here nationally, but it's here in New York City, which could be a really great satellite for progressive politics in the country. So I take that very seriously. So I wanted to make sure what we did was something that had structural impact, not just something that was about celebrating the Women's March that happened in 2017, but something that recognized, oh, wait a minute, we're in 2019. We got the largest number of women in Congress in the history of the United States, right?
Yeah.
So this is a moment for us to celebrate, to uplift what we've accomplished, but also to speak about what is yet to be done. So that's really kind of the energy that we're trying to bring together.
So you talk about unity, and I mean, it's no secret. There's been a little bit of drama with the Women's March.
Right.
I've called it for what it is. Those who are pushing that are threatened by the power of what you all have done.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have the house flipped because of the women's wave. Now, the same person who started all this stuff on Twitter, on ABC, Jake Tapper, started attacking our sister Tamika early in the year. It's the same person that said there was no blue wave. And I was showing that to folk last night. They were like, oh, we hadn't thought about that.
Right.
So all of this is an agenda. So, there's some drama, and you got different groups doing different things. But you all are calling for unity. That's what we need.
Absolutely. What we need is unity, and also what we need to recognize is where we're at, because we're winning.
We are.
You know what I mean? The thing
And that's
is,
the problem. Folks want to attack you when you win it.
Exactly right. I was speaking to a reporter the other day, and I said that, we're in the game now because people are attacking us so much, and that shows to me how much power we got. Yeah. So how I interpret that, and that's why we're doing a women's unity rally on January 19th downtown at Foley Square in New York City, 10 to 2 p.m. Please come through. And the reason why we're doing that is because we understand our power. We understand that in New York State we're powerful. We understand in this country we're powerful. So what we need to do is make sure that we get together with other organizers, like institutions in the city that are advocating for social justice and for their communities, and uplift that message. In addition to making sure that we make it plain, right, to the folks who are detractors. So, it's tricky. It's one of those things where there's an extent to which I think you do have to push back and be on offense when people come at you like that. I do think you have to do that. But on the other hand, you also don't want to get too distracted by their shenanigans.
That's right.
So it's a real balancing act.
I agree.
Yeah, so that's something that we're trying to do here in New York. Just to clarify, so my chapter is the official chapter of Women's March in New York City. Which is connected to the national and the global movement, right? Mm-hmm. There's another march that happens in the Upper West Side that happens every year. They just do this march. It's not connected to any policy platforms, not connected to any organizers in the city. It's not connected to, frankly, the organizer of it is not from New York, nor does she really represent or work with New Yorkers. So, that's something that people will go to if they wish to. But what we're trying to organize is something that is a broad coalition of literally every ethnic group you could imagine in New York, including the Jewish community, that is about celebrating and uplifting communities of color, Black women in particular, immigrant women, women of color, recognizing their centrality in terms of leadership, but also to celebrate the general tapestry of what the city is.
Folks, quick calls on the Women's March in general and the Women's March in particular here in New York City. 866-99-SERIOUS, 866-997-4748 with our very special guest in studio, Agunda Okeyo. Now, she's here with us. You can actually see her Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're streaming right now if you want to see her in the flesh. Part of this intersectionality, because this is also the first time, and I'm glad Gloria Steinem is going to be with you.
Yes.
This is also the first time in the feminist movement when you've had white women and women of color working so close together. And see, that's the other thing these mischief makers want to disrupt.
Right.
If you can destroy that, then you pretty much, can undermine the whole women's movement.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something we have to take seriously. I mean, I feel like in this moment, in terms of how we've been moving with this Women's Unity Rally, I felt very responsible to making sure that I was protecting the movement. Even though I'm the director of the New York City chapter, there's a much bigger picture we're trying to protect. Gloria Steinem, thankfully, has been a friend of mine for many years. I have a lot of intergenerational and multiracial relationships, which I've been leveraging and making sure we're having a really great program. But, Gloria, in many ways, to me, is an anomaly. She was someone who has worked closely with a lot of women in the movement, whether it was Dorothy Pittman Hughes, Flo Kennedy, Alice Walker. She was supportive of the Combahee River Collective. She did a lot of things that I think make her a hero and to a lot of white women, because a lot of white women don't do that work. But having her in the space, she also is a unity bringer. She herself is somebody who I think kind of represents some sort of understanding of coming together. And we know she was very close to Wilma Mankiller, who was the first Cherokee woman chief of that nation.
Right.
So, we also have a really great program of musicians. We'll have activists and organizers. We really want to center the activists and organizers and the local community folk, even though we'll have some politicians. Stacey Ann Chin is a wonderful performer who'll be there as well. We'll have musicians. Maku Sound System is an Afro-Latino band that we're going to have there. So it's going to be a real celebration and uplift, and there'll be some, well-known people, and there'll be some not-so-well-known people. But at the end of the day, they'll all be New Yorkers, and they'll all be people who understand the priorities and the principles of what we're trying to accomplish.
Folks, we're going to put the details up on our screen, too, so you can see them for yourselves on January 19th at 10 a.m. In Foley Square.
Foley Square, yes.
In Foley Square. Now, how did you get involved in the whole Women's March piece yourself, personally?
Well, thank you for asking me that. Not enough people ask me that. So I grew up here in New York. I'm originally from Nairobi. I was born in Nairobi, and I grew up in the city. And I'm actually a third generation African feminist. My
Mm.
grandmother was very much a pro African woman who combated the British colonial system that was trying to teach women home economics, and she wanted to make sure they learned economics. And she also wanted to make sure girls and women got education. She was part of an African council that was in Kenya at the time, and was very much a vocal and very well-known, outspoken Black African woman.
This was your grandmother.
This is my grandmother.
What was her name?
Agnes Bolo.
Agnes Bolo.
Yeah.
So was this before decolonization?
Yeah, before and after.
Wow.
Because she was born in the early 1900s.
Okay.
And my grandfather, her husband, was a minister. He converted to Christianity on his own accord, and he was a teacher in the community. And they both were a real partnership. They were a real union. And she was a spitfire. She was like, don't mess with her. She was one of those.
Did you know her?
I did.
Okay,
I did get to know her a bit. And my mom these days, as you know, because she passed away when I was still like in my like a teenager or something, maybe a little young, maybe 12 or 13. But my mother these days calls me by her name because my mom says I remind her of her.
Oh, right.
And yeah, and then my mother, she's the first African woman to write about African women's land rights in pre-colonial Africa. She's a Harvard-educated anthropologist. She worked in the United Nations. She was the head of the Africa section of UNIFEM, which is now UN Women, and the head of policy and governance at UNDP. And she was one of the organizers of the Beijing Conference, as well as a couple other major women's conferences.
So this is history. What's your mom's name? We want to know these
famous
women in history.
My mother is Dr. Chola Pala Okeyo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go any other way. It's in your blood.
Oh yes. So I mean, for me, the way I look at this, particularly issues about environment are concerned to me, and housing, and those pieces connect to me because, even my name, my first name means the land underneath the first homestead in the community, and my last name means born at harvest time. So I'm always conscious of land and weather. So so it's something where, like, when I think about issues of housing or issues of the environment right now, those are the things that really affect me and make me very emotional. And I definitely was someone who watched my mother doing her work, and she'd take me around to places all the time when I was a kid. And she was a very strong influence on me, just like her mother was a very strong influence on her. So a lot of times people don't understand that African women in pre-colonial Africa and even in post-colonial Africa have our own consciousness, our own understanding, our own analysis. And we have a rooted understanding of who we are as African people before the Europeans ever came.
Yeah. So you all were feminists before they were feminists.
Oh, yes.
Before that was even a word.
Correct.
Well, and if we look at our history in our antiquity, I mean, Kemet or Egypt had African rulers. Mm-hmm. Southern Africa had African women rulers. Mm-hmm. West Africa had African women rulers. Mm-hmm. Two sayings I always like to quote. When I was involved in the anti-apartheid struggle, one of the most inspiring statements that used to be made, the ANC Women's League used to always say, when you have touched the women, you have struck a rock. And when apartheid came for the women, they said, y'all messed with the wrong people. And then Dr. Kwame Nkrumah used to always say, Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah would always say that you determine any nation's revolutionary awareness by the political maturity of its women, not of its men, but of its women, because you all are the first teachers,
right?
And it's interesting how our lineage carries over, because to be honest, black women pretty much determine what is and what isn't in the black community in terms of African Americans in this.
Absolutely.
So it's all about the women. My two-parent household was my grandmother and my mother, so I got it early.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So this is important, and that's why as a male, as you all have heard me say, I am a feminist, a proud feminist as a male, and that is not a compromise on my manhood.
Right. Absolutely.
That doesn't make me less of a man. It's not a threat or anything, and the sooner the rest of us men get that, the better.
Absolutely. It's my grandfather was someone who really helped me understand that, because one of the principles he had was that he had 6 daughters and 3 sons, and he said of the 6 daughters, he said, none of you are allowed to get married and leave this house until you have some sort of certificate of your own. meaning that you can actually take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So you're not dependent on a man.
Yeah.
And he was saying this in like, I'm talking about like the 30s, 40s, 50s. I mean, like,
Wow.
it's a long time ago. And, that showed me that, feminism is for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, the idea that, empowering young women is really critical to having a stable society. And I think my community understood that because my grandparents, their household was the household or pretty much every girl in that community was able to stay there and get their education. And, there was the activism of my grandmother, and then there was also the activism of my grandfather and the support that they gave each other as a man and as a woman and respecting each other's roles.
Indeed, and that's very important.
Yeah.
Folks, if you look at your screen, the details are there. January 19th, 10 a.m. This will be at Foley Square for those of you not making the journey to D.C. Now, there's still, I understand, buses going to D.C., but, the power of the Women's March, I know even as many people as we had in D.C., when they had all those split screens on television showing where there were demonstrations and solidarity around the world, it was really something. So there are enough women to go around. We can fill up D.C. We can also fill up New York.
Right.
And you all ought to help our sister out, Agunda here, and fill up New York too. It's enough people. And really set aside January 19th, this special day. This will be a women's wave, and there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, we thank you for coming in this morning. Does the Women's March NYC have its own website? Yeah,
so you can go to nycwomensmarch.com. On social media, on Facebook and Instagram, we're Women's March NYC.
Yes, ma'am.
And then on Facebook, Facebook for some reason or another, we're NYCWM.
Okay.
But generally, if you look for me, also you can find some stuff. So at Agunda Okeyo everywhere.
Agunda Okeyo. How? So you still have family back home?
Yeah, my mom moved back home like maybe 15 years ago or something.
Is that right?
Yeah, and then my father passed away, but he moved home a while ago. He was he liked to be on Kenyan soil.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you go visit much?
I try to, yeah. I'm actually planning to go this year. It's very like, it's one of those things, wherever you're from, wherever your family's been for a while, when you go there, like, you just feel something, like it's something else, Yeah. I think one thing I'm privileged with is, to some extent, growing up in the diaspora, I've been able to meet a lot of other folks from the diaspora, so I have a lot of connection and also cultural empathy with a lot of folks from the diaspora. But when I go home, what's funny is that there's a lot of stuff that it's just like old. You know what I mean? Like It's just, the smells smell better, the food tastes better. It's just things that make no sense. Even though I've been in New York for probably close to 30 years. So, but it's definitely a big part of my heart for sure.
So you were born in Kenya, so and so you called yourself an immigrant.
Yeah, I mean,
people don't like immigrants these days.
I know that's right. Yeah, I mean, I say a lot of things proudly. You know what I mean? Because I consider myself a patriot. I think some people are just born with that instinct where they want to hold whoever they respect to account, and they need them to be at a certain standard. Right. I'm a patriot to Kenya. I love being Kenyan, but I'm also a patriot to the United States, even though I'm not a citizen, because I think this country has a little ways to go in order to kind of regain some of the idea of its integrity, basically that post-World War II dream that we keep living off of. I think that the country now, especially when I think about the spirit of Women's March, why I joined it, was I was like, wow, this is a mass movement in the United States that actually could potentially create some sort of cohesion for the struggle that we have ahead of us, because we have serious things we need to accomplish. If you just think about climate alone. Yeah. So it's something where I'm just grateful to be a part of this movement.
What do you think about this wall?
Oh, yeah.
Foolishness.
I mean, that's just BS. I mean, one thing I've told people straight up and down, and I've written about this, Donald Trump is a dictator. His behavior, his conduct, the way he actually operates is incredibly familiar to me as somebody who's grown up in nations where democracy was not actually functioning. And our democracy also was not functioning because of neocolonialism, so it wasn't just us. We have some problems of our own, but there's been some help on there. But when I look at the way he's doing these press conferences, not taking any feedback, doing these press junkets in the middle of the day, and then just trying to talk to people, talking at them about what he wants, talking about, I'm going to declare a state of emergency, trying to meander around the law. And I look all of that, and I've seen it before, and a lot of us from other developing nations have seen it before. And I think that's also why we're some of the most outspoken people in general in the history of this country. When you think about, say, a Howard Zinn or a Hannah Arendt, other people who've really been immigrants who've recognized that, you know what, this country has a lot going for it. It needs to do better by its people. And I think Donald Trump, he's a shameful kind of blight on American history, but hopefully we'll get rid of him in 2020.
You mentioned writing. Where can people read some of your writing, sister?
Yeah, so you can check out my website, agundaokeyo.com, which will have an archive of the things that I've written. I write a lot about like politics, culture, geopolitics, comedy, because I also produce stand-up, funny enough.
For real?
Yeah, I do.
Are you a comic yourself?
Sometimes. I mean, people try to say that I am, but I produce at Caroline's. I have a show called Sisters of Comedy. It's the
Really?
Yeah, it's the longest-running Black women-centered comedy show here in New York. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. No, but I've been doing it for a couple years. It's turning 5 now, but it's been a long time since I've been a show like this. And I think you always need a Black woman behind the scenes in order to assure there's Black women in front of the scenes, you know?
My elder comrade, our ancestor, Dick Gregory, was always a big hit at
Oh,
Caroline's.
yeah, Dick Gregory, yeah.
Well, you got Sister Comedy. You see that performance studio next door?
Mm-hmm.
This is my studio,
Okay.
and that's the performance studio over there.
Okay.
So you ought to bring some of the sisters through here sometime. Get them on the air.
I would love to do that. That would be great. I'd love to
Yeah,
do that.
That'd
Yeah.
be wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess you are. So what do you do? What do you do for a living? What is your daily vocation? I mean, obviously,
Yeah.
you're activist and organizer.
Yeah. So I mean, honestly, a lot of this stuff has kind of it's taken over
Okay,
my
good.
life.
Well, that's what it's supposed to be. When
yeah,
it can.
yeah. So I'm actually like technically a writer and a producer. That's
Okay,
really
good.
like what
Good,
I do.
good. All right.
So and I've been in the city kind of known for that to some extent. And then I even before the election, I recognized that the moment was coming, kind of a thing, and I made sure I just tried to figure out how I could carry both. So even this past year, not to people always like, Agunda, you're doing the most. So so even this past year, we've had this chapter, we've been doing actions regularly, leading up to this, this unity rally, this women's unity rally at Foley Square on Saturday, January 19th, 10 to 2. I also was producing at Caroline's last year. We were at the Tribeca Film Festival, the Schomburg, and Afropunk Festival.
Wow.
The comedy show. Yeah.
Right. So that's great.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm grateful that I had elders in my life, including my mother and other folks, who showed me that despite the way that systems try to diminish you and they try to make it seem like you can't do something, if you try to dig deep and recognize your own family and look at the people in your community and how powerful they are, you can pretty much do anything. So I try my best to do the most.
Yeah. Keep doing the most.
Yeah.
That's what they say. You're doing the most.
Right.
That's what my teenagers say. Oh my God, you're doing the most.
Yes.
Oh my God. You know that noise teenagers make. We didn't do that though. We didn't do that when we was growing up. We didn't make that noise.
No.
Oh my God, to our parents. Oh my, we didn't talk to our parents like that. Are you serious?
Well, you'd end up seeing stars because you got hit in the
right.
back of the head. That's what
That's
happened.
right.
So,
Oh my God, you're talking. You're talking. What am I supposed? I'm talk show host. What am I supposed to do? Again, thank you for coming in. Agunda Okeyo, agundaokeyo.com. Website for the Women's March again, NYC?
It's nycwomensmarch.com.
nycwomensmarch.com. This is great. Glad you came by.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank
wonderful.
You for
Folks, support the Women's March, okay? Period. Don't be discouraged. Anybody who's talking against it is the enemy, okay? Because we all not going to agree on every single thing every day. That's what intersectionality is, and we struggle around it. But we all agree that Donald Trump is the devil. We all agree that we need to fight for the rights of women, equality. We all agree that women's reproductive rights are important. We need to protect those. We all agree that women's are equal pay for equal work.
Absolutely.
All right? Gender discrimination in all forms, we need to fight against it. All right? And those of us men who call ourselves liberals and progressives need to not be threatened by women in leadership. We need to be head over them, but instead get up under them and lift them up. That's what we ought to do, and we all had the courage to do that. And if you're secure, and now if you can't do it if you got a tiny hands complex,
right?
And you got to build walls that are long to deal with that complex. That's what that's about,
right?
You know
Absolutely, yes.
Long that something's wrong with you. All right, so we need to embrace our sisters and listen to them. We've messed up the world enough as men. We need to give women a chance to mess it up if they want to and make some mistakes.
Yeah.
Not that y'all would. But even if you do,
yeah.
it's time for some different mistakes.
Absolutely. And real talk, I think we'll actually be able to right the ship.
I know you will.
Yeah.
I know you will.
Absolutely.
I know you will. And, some of us may have to be some casualties, but that's all right because we won't wake up and get ourselves together. But we're going to do it after January 19th. And so I'm supposed to be in New York. I mean, I'm supposed to be in D.C.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't know. You want me to stay here?
I'd love it if you stay here. You kidding? That'd be great. I'd love it if you stay here.
No, we'll see. We'll see. But I support everything you're doing. And folks, we'll be broadcasting everything on January 19th here on SiriusXM Progress. Agunda Okeyo, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much.
Bless your sister.
Thank you.
Asante Sana.
Oh, Missouri Sana.
Yes. Folks, we'll be back. John Delaney, he's running for president. We'll talk to him next. This is MIP.